We have the smallest marketing budget out of our competitors, but we're growing faster than everyone else. And I believe a lot of it's due to...
What would you say is your biggest, best tip for our listeners that want to take their businesses beyond seven figures?
Geez, that's a short question for a long answer.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. So before we get going, as a reminder, if you're looking for more strategies, tips, and information to grow your business faster, more predictably, and less dependent on you, check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. Let's get to my guest today. So many of my agency clients have all told me about this tool that they use that helps them generate better results, more accurate results, and inevitably higher ROAS for their clients. And if ROAS is a new term for you, it's return on ad spend. And there's a lot of issues when it comes to paid advertising and tracking. We tend to think, well, all these ad networks, whether it's Meta or Google or you name it, well, they have pixels and they track the conversions, so shouldn't that be good enough? But there's gaps and there's problems with that. And we're going to get into why those problems exist. We're going to talk about how to track better. And as I sort of dove a little bit deeper into this program and the software, I realized that they had something unique. And it's really exciting. And I want to learn more about it. And therefore, I invited the co-founder of this particular software on today's podcast because, look, let's face it, everything that we do is all about helping you create an advantage and an edge in your business. And I do think this is one of those tools that you can use. It's just going to help you that much further. So this tool that I'm referring to, it's called WhatConverts. Many of you probably are already using it or know what it's about. And even if you think you know about this tool, we're going to uncover a few things that I'm sure you don't know about it. My guest today, again, is a co-founder, Michael Cooney. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Charles. That was quite an intro. I appreciate it. And looking forward to the discussion.
Your program came up quite a few times, and it's a favorite among many of our ad buying agencies. What is the problem with relying on the native conversion tracking from whether it's Meta or Google or Bing or LinkedIn? What's the problem with just relying on those conversion pixels?
So, I mean, to put it in a nutshell, is the value. So if you get a conversion, what's the value of that conversion? Now, if you have an e-commerce store, you can get the value from the checkout, easy. And you just attach the marketing attribution to that value. You have value, you have what you spent. The calculation for ROI is easy. Now, if you're tracking a form fill or a phone call or even a chat as a conversion action, what's the value of that? So a phone call could be worth $1, or it could be spam, or that phone call could be worth $1 million. And that's the big difference. The native tools that you have, like for instance, Google Ads, they'll track phone calls. They'll tell you how many phone calls you got. A percentage of them will be nuisance calls because they use the same tracking phone numbers from previous campaigns. A percentage of them will be pure spam, and a percentage of them will be good calls. But all you know is you got, let's say, 100 phone calls. What was the value? I don't know. How many of them were spam? I don't know. How many of them were nuisance calls? I don't know. Our tool clears all that up, allows you to see who the people are, allows you to see the conversation, allows you to even see the transcript, apply AI to determine, was this a lead or was it spam or was it not? And then you can categorize it and give it a value. And so basically at the end of the day, it's putting a value to those conversions that the platforms can't do. And then it's sending that value back into the platforms. And now those ad campaigns run a whole lot better because now they're relying on value instead of trying to rely on conversions. And even for themselves, it's like, oh, it was a conversion. Even though it was a spam conversion, they're going to optimize your campaign with their algorithms on spam data. So by us cleaning up all the conversions, finding out the value, and then only sending the ones back to Google, Facebook, with the value, now their algorithm works so much better and you get a better ROAS.
I know that one of my clients, and I want to give him a shout out, Andrew Young from Core and More, he was the first one to make me aware of this program. And he was showing me how easy it is to use. It's a matter of just adding one little line of code thereabouts, and then the phone numbers are dynamically changed on the web page. If somebody just picks up the phone and calls, that it's actually tracked very accurately, depending on whether they're calling from an ad or they're calling from SEO or whatever it might be. Like, he can track things all the way down super, super precisely so that there's no guesswork.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we gather. So it starts with, most people come to us for call tracking. So call tracking software. And what call tracking software is it displays tracking numbers on a website automatically. And so when somebody comes to the website, it attaches the marketing attribution to that phone call. And so it's called DNI, dynamic number insertion. And so we do that, but so do many other call tracking companies. So it's very slick. It's very easy to implement. It's literally adding a tracking code to your website. You don't need to change your telephone numbers at all. The software does it for you. As long as you add the tracking code to your website, we automatically capture that data. So some of our competitors on the call tracking side, you have to set up a specific campaign with a group of numbers. With our software, it's just like you just set up the dynamic number pool, and doesn't matter if they come from Facebook or Google or TikTok, we can capture the marketing attribution tied to that lead.
Which just makes everything far more efficient, because if you know that, say, Google search is, or some degree of Google LSAs or whatnot, that's actually performing better. You've got a limited marketing budget. Then if you want to, it makes it a lot easier if you can reallocate your marketing budget that you have to the areas that are working, that are delivering the higher ROAS, rather than just blanket assuming, well, we have this budget, so let's sort of allocate it randomly to whatever makes sense. Now, one of the things that we say all the time at Predictable Profits is guesswork is a cancer of all business. So you want to be able to eliminate that guesswork by getting as much data as possible. And the better the data that you have, the more efficient and the more effective everything that you're doing actually ends up becoming. So that's where your tool becomes super, super beneficial.
So before we started WhatConverts, I was running an agency, and we were tracking results. We had developed marketing attribution tracking systems for our forms. So we knew exactly what form was coming from what marketing, and this was before WhatConverts. And then we were like, oh, we need to track calls. So we actually used a call tracking company, and we're tracking them. And what we realized, even though we had the data and we knew where calls were coming from, I went into a meeting with a client and I said, hey, we doubled leads this month. Isn't that great? And he turned around to me and he said, like, well, I don't know. He says, it seems like a lot of the quotes we're doing are for existing customers. How do I know it's from marketing? And I'm like, yeah, I was going to use it as momentum to motivate additional ad spend. And he cut me off at the knees because I had to answer that question. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to spend 3 hours gathering the data to show him that it was our marketing, not existing customers, and even though they're existing, it was marketing that touched it. So that was actually the founding moment. I was like, enough. And the reason I mention this is people see, oh, I need call tracking software and it's going to answer it. That's not true. So with WhatConverts, we're a lead tracking platform. And the reason for that is you got to get your calls, your forms, your chat into one place. You got to be able to see the data in one place, and you have to have reporting on that data to show you the insights. So what you're saying, guesswork is the cancer of business?
Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely true. So if you just use call tracking and you're getting data and you're seeing it, but you don't have the tools to get the insights from that data, you're going to end up being frustrated. And that's what we found that we were as an agency before we developed WhatConverts. Now, if I go into the meeting with WhatConverts and the customer asks that question, I can say in 2 seconds, like, oh, no, you're talking about these customers. Yes, they're existing customers, but let me show you their customer journey. They returned to your website before this quote coming from a Google ad, and they weren't searching for your company name. They're searching for a product. And if marketing didn't put you in that position, that existing customer would have got a quotes from somewhere else. So we were able to get down to that detail. It made the client happier when we could show them this detail, because it's like we were taking the guesswork out for them. They need to allocate, millions of dollars in marketing budget. And up until now, it's been like, well, where do I spend it? I think it's working. Yes, sales are increasing. I'm not quite sure if it's the marketing side or the sales side or our operations
Right.
team. So now we see our platform as a truth-seeking tool. We want to deliver the truth.
To that point, I see happening all the time. A company, a client, turn around and go, well, the form that was filled out actually came from my website. It didn't come from the landing page that we're running our ads on. Therefore, if it didn't come from the landing page that we're running the ads on, but it actually came from a form that was filled organically on our actually website, then the agency who's actually driving the clicks to the landing page, they didn't get credit for it. Therefore, it doesn't count. But your software actually does it differently, right? Because even though through attribution, this is where data gets messy, right? Because through attribution, Google will say, no, hey, we got a conversion. But in the way that the client looks at it, they go, well, I don't know where that conversion came from. Because they tell you what, the form that they filled out actually came from our homepage. Therefore, I don't see what the ad agency is doing that is connecting any of the dots. But that's where you're able to more clearly identify that journey and the impact that that ad actually had in starting that conversation.
Exactly. Yeah.
And here's the interesting thing is that I had this conversation yesterday with a company. They're doing $17 million a year. And one of the things that we were talking about is how there's this omni-channel buyer's journey in the whole deal. And he said, he's going into this big description. I go, look, it's funny. I graduated from business school and I didn't really do much studying when it came to marketing and entrepreneurship. I didn't have to. I said, because one of my superpowers is I can put myself in the client's journey and actually know how everything works and just make common sense out of it. And it's marketing and entrepreneurship is nothing more than common sense. And he says, what do you mean? I go, let's take a step back for a minute. I want you to imagine the last thing that you purchased. He says, okay. I said, did you wait to click on an ad before you purchased it? And he says, oh, no, I didn't. I go, okay. But at some point, you probably became aware during that process where you may have clicked on an ad. I mean, the research shows that, back in 2019, the average person looked at 17 different sources of information before that went up to 27 in 2021. Now they're suggesting it could be as high as 36. So your prospects go through this cycle of exploration and evaluation. In order for you to be considered in that exploration or evaluation, oftentimes it's going to be an ad, or it could be something SEO somewhere, but something had to get you into that mix of exploration and evaluation. And do you know where that happened? And a lot of times people are just going to go directly to the URL, or they're going to search the company name into Google, and then they'll fill it. And then the agencies don't get any credit for it until you guys came around, because then you're able to show, actually, wait a minute, back up, because here's the buyer's journey. And if you didn't have this in place, or even this in place, because they actually they engaged once here and they engaged another one here, then you wouldn't have been part of this conversation. And that's where we're starting to eliminate the guesswork, and we can attach, not necessarily, and this is a hard thing, it's hard to attach a ROAS to just one campaign and one keyword. You almost have to look at it more holistically, because there's too many factors that come into play.
Yeah. So first of all, there's so many different types of companies, and we do see customer journeys where it's Google ad purchase,
Sure.
Simple. Now for WhatConverts, I looked at the latest person that signed up, a nice big agency signed up for WhatConverts, and they came from Google Ads for call tracking software. They looked at us, they went away, they came back from a review site, G2 Reviews, and they came back. And then they searched Google Organic. They said, my competitor versus WhatConverts, and we have an article in that. So they came back to that. And then they came back direct again. There were 6 attribution points before they did a trial. And what you realize is, it's not just one ad. In marketing, there's many touch points. And I say to people, some people are saying marketing attribution's a myth. because you can't track it. Because when I was running marathons and I wanted to buy some shoes, and my brother was using runningwarehouse.com and he told me about it. So you can't connect advertising to me, you know? And so you think like, well, okay, you see marketing attribution would have been able to track me to get my running shoes. But what I've seen, so we track 4 million leads a month, and I see a lot of accounts. And what you find is, and even myself, I look at our WhatConverts tracking data daily. And what you'll find is like, as long as you're tracking a good percentage, that gives you huge intelligence to make really intelligent decisions.
Sure.
And, and then as you see the patterns on what people are doing, it's very actionable data. So I know exactly which channels, I know exactly which campaigns, I know exactly which keywords are driving our business. And even though a few may come from other areas, like for instance, Corin Moore, your friend Andrew Young, so he's mentioned us to other people, they just come direct.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we can't track that. But I do know, like for instance, I know the Google Ads channel works very well for us. I know Google Organic works very well. I know that our brand name has increased over the years because I can see the keywords being used and the pages that they land on, because we track the landing page as well. So there's lots of evidence, and I look at it and it's like a tapestry, and you can see a picture, from the data we have. And it's very insightful. So that's why, we're a bootstrap company. We have the smallest marketing budget out of our competitors, but we're growing faster than everyone else. And I believe a lot of it's due to the intelligence we have from our tool.
When you think about the average cookie, it has a 28-day window, right?
Not for us.
But for Google and for Meta, it's 28 days, right?
So yeah, 30, 60, or 90, you can choose, but by default, 30 days. Yeah. Well, for Facebook, 28 days. For Google, by default, is 30 days.
And I think if you look at the buying cycle of the average person, so we ran the study, we found that 7.5% of marketing qualified leads will buy something between 0 and 90 days, but it's actually 42.5% of marketing qualified leads will do something between 90 days and 2 years from now, right?
Yeah.
Marketing, a lot of people tend to think I do marketing, but you can't actually do marketing. Marketing actually is a function. It's a function of three things. It's how you create demand, capture demand, and nurture demand. And when you're creating demand, so much of that happens where people are anonymous. You don't really know what's going on. Just as you mentioned, they might be reading an article, going to G2 reviews, clicking on an ad, whatever it is, but they haven't actually submitted their name anywhere yet. And so traditionally, where people begin to track is after they've submitted their name somewhere and they go, oh, they submitted the name, therefore Facebook works, because Facebook is where they submitted the name. And so that's what happened, without looking at the entire journey. And in order for you to become the most effective marketer, if you want to call it that, possible, you have to understand how each part fits in to one another. We had a client many years ago, and they had this series of consumption ads that were all built and laid out. And the one particular ad was actually the one that was attributed to the conversions. And they said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to remove some of the stuff that happened beforehand, because obviously that doesn't work. We're not getting conversions from those ads. And I issued some caution, and I said, see, the thing is, the story that you're missing is that how everything brought them to that point, because it's consumption that drives conversion, right? So there are things that brought them to that point. If you remove that one ad, that's going to change the result. Most of the time, clients do listen to me, and I like that. There's sometimes, that they don't. Okay, it is what it is. And so he believed that, it was right. The moment he removed the ad from the sequence, the conversion of that one particular form that he was tracking just completely went down the toilet. And again, it's because he didn't see the whole picture. And that's one of the things that I really like most about WhatConverts. And I'll tell you, for anybody that's been listening to our podcasts, I can't even think of the last episode that we did where I've just really been talking about one product over and over again. And I mean, look, I don't get a commission from anything that you sell. I'm not an affiliate. I have no paid relationship with you. There's no financial benefit. I'm not a stockholder. There's no financial benefit for me to be talking about this one program. Again, I'm in this because we believe that we have to provide our clients with the greatest advantage possible. And when I see these opportunities that exist all over the place, and people are inadvertently making wrong decisions because they don't have the full picture, that's where all of a sudden my alarm bells are going off left and right. It's like, we have to see the right picture for you to get the best results. And that's why I really wanted to make sure that I invited you on this program so that people could see holistically what's happening so that they can actually get better results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what you're saying is why we exist. One thing that really fascinates me is that, let's say there's two companies, they're both customers of WhatConverts, so I can see the data. Yes, so let's say they're a flooring company that sell hardwood floors. One company is doing $1 million a year. The other one's doing $20 million a year. They have the same product. They're using WhatConverts. They're using Google Ads. So what's the difference? And the amazing difference is the one has taken the data, seen that it works, and has grown and has the desire. He has the growth mindset to grow. It's literally the only difference. One's decided to really use the tool to invest. And when he saw oh, I put in $5,000 in ads and I got 50 grand back. So I'm going to put in 10 grand. The other guy saw marketing as an expense. He says, I put in $1,000. Yeah, I got some back, but I'm not sure. So I'll put in another $1,000. And then the guy that's just kept leveling up each time, at the end of it, one's 20 times more valuable than the other one. Same company, same product, using the same tools, but one had a growth mindset and a desire to grow, and the other one didn't. And it's just, I look at that and I find it fascinating. And I've seen that across my career because I've been doing marketing for 25 years. In my agency days, I had two clients in a very similar industry. One recently sold their company for $70 million. And the other one, where he was doing the online stuff, he shuttered it. It wasn't really working.
Yeah.
And the one that did well, he was always pushing. He every day he came in, it's like, where's the friction point? And so to give you one example of this guy that was amazing, it was just, it's one thing having information, but if you don't action it, it does you no good.
Yep.
So the one client that's sold recently, he realized that when people came in, he wanted to quote them as quickly as possible, but it would require about an hour to get all the information together to quote. So he saw that as an issue. How do I get it down to 5-minute quotes? And he got it down. Long story short, he eventually got it down, the system down, by building up databases and automations. He could quote somebody in 30 seconds. What happened is that he had quoted and sold people inquiring for his products before his competitor even quoted. And just like that move changed the game, where he went from being third in the market to number one in a very short space of time. And so I'm saying this, that we are a tool, and where people like Corin Moore, Andrew Young, that utilize the tool and they have their experience, their knowledge, and the skill set they continue developing. And so that skill and experience, alongside with the tool, they get results. So it's not all WhatConverts, it's also the person that uses it and the process that they do. And then we have other people, they've got the tool, they've got the data, but they don't do anything with it. Yeah. And so I was using this analogy the other day, and I woke up in the morning, I was saying, I wonder how much a rough diamond is worth compared to a finished polished diamond. So I went to ChatGPT and I asked, and a rough diamond, for a 1-carat diamond, is worth about $1,000. The final product is $20,000.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, that is incredible. So if you look at that, what does it take to take a rough diamond into a polished diamond? It takes skill, it takes experience, it takes time, and it takes tools. And so it's the same thing with WhatConverts. We're a tool, but you need those people with the skill, experience, and the time. Because when you're running campaigns, You need to let it run, the time, you have the experience. And like you said, with your experience in marketing, you just know that sometimes there's a 2-year sales cycle. That's valuable. That's the experience you bring to it. That's how you take something very rough into something really polished. And the polished item is 20 times more valuable.
Absolutely. So let's actually talk a little bit more about, you've got all these data points. WhatConverts, as I recall, is over 10 years old. So you have over a
Mhm.
decade of seeing what works and what doesn't work. For our listeners that are saying, okay, here's the deal, Michael, I get it. I'll go ahead and we're going to give the tool a shot. But where I need help is, I need help actually creating those conversion elements. I need help with ads and landing pages and all that other jazz. See that works. And what do you see that doesn't work? And let's focus in on like the B2B space. So in
Mhm.
B2B space, what do you see that actually works and what doesn't work among your most successful clients?
So, yeah, I've got a great answer for that because before, when I was in an agency, I would focus on industrial national companies where big accounts spread out. And I hit a limit. I hit a ceiling because my skill set only went so far. I only had so much time. And the people I employed didn't have all the experience needed for these big national accounts. So I kind of hit the ceiling. What I've found with the successful agencies that grow beyond the founder or the initial agency is they choose an industry and then they systemize.
Mhm,
And so when they systemize, so they specialize in plumbing, heating, and ventilation companies.
mhm,
And so what happens is they get success with one company in a market,
mhm,
and then they rubber stamp that
mhm,
across all the markets. So now you got a company, they've got a system that can serve 200 clients without the founder individually involved. They set up the system, it's the process, it's the standardization of it. It's knowing like if this works with this one client, we can apply it to 200. And so it's not one thing. Like you mentioned earlier, LSA ads. They're the new kid on the block, and for plumbing industries, they work great. And so people will come out and say, well, with an LSA ad, I pay $80 a lead. With a search ad, I'm paying $120 a lead. LSA is better. And I've seen this movie many times. Before you know it, LSAs are going to be, costing $150 a lead, and the search ads are going to be 120. So it's always changing its ebb and flow. But one thing I've always looked at is that, I've also got so with my agency, it's still going. We've had clients that have been with us for 20 years, and we've got pages that are still ranking today with Google. And you ask why, and it's like, well, the content serves the user.
mhm.
It's a quality content, solves a problem for the user, or gives them the information that they need. When a user gets it, they get served and they go away. If you know the problem you're solving or the solution you're giving, and you provide quality content in a format that's easily digestible, you can't go wrong there.
Mhm.
And then it's getting people to there. So I've also seen it where something's working, it's great, and now competitors come in and they sort of squeeze you out. So you got to react to that. And I've had clients that where that's happened, and that's where tools really make a difference. Because in the early days, we're 10 years old in March, we'd say to the customers using WhatConverts, you should really qualify your leads and put a value to them so you can optimize your marketing. And they were like, I don't have to do that. We're getting results just by tracking the conversions, and we're happy. The competitors came, and what used to cost $1 now costs $10. And then I'm like, okay, you've got two choices. You could either just spend more to get the same amount, or you can be strategic with tools and spend the same amount and then still get the same amount, but you have to put in a bit more effort. And so over time, as things have become more competitive, the need for the tools becomes greater. They become more motivated. Now all of a sudden, because they need to be strategic, they need to put in the effort to use the tool.
Got it. And what about like the actual ad strategy itself? So
Right.
You talked about LSA, but there's Google, there's Bing, there's retargeting, there's all this other fun stuff. You see some people taking people to a homepage. You see other people building specific landing pages. You see, LinkedIn and direct to lead forms. There's a million different options. So
Yeah.
for somebody who's like, let's say for somebody starting out and they're like, okay, and let's pretend they're going to run their own ads. So what are you seeing there is both as where you run an agency, so you can see things on your
Mhm.
end, but also from what converts. What are you seeing if you're going to direct somebody who's going to run their own ads, they get a B2B company? What are you saying? Here's best practices.
Yeah. So the first thing I do is so we got a 6-step process. Step 1 is track the data. So if you don't have the data, you can't get insights. So we make sure you're tracking all the data you possibly can. So we encourage people, if you're going to run an ad campaign or you're going to do anything or you're getting a new client, even before you start work, track the data, get a baseline, so get the baseline. And then if you use our tool, depending on how many leads you get, once you've got 100 leads, you can see, oh, Google Ads is bringing the most leads, or Facebook is bringing the most leads. And then you can look at, okay, Google Ads, well, it's this keyword, it's this campaign, and you start getting a very clear picture. So first step is just track the data. Step 2 is look at the data. And I don't just mean look at the summary of the data, like, oh, I got 10 leads from the hard floor campaign. I'm saying look at the individual leads. And this is one thing that I've always done with my agencies is when I talk to the client, the first thing I'll say is, can I talk to your sales team? Or can you give me a few call recordings? Can you show me the forms that they fill in? I want to see that the words that they use, when they're asking for something. So with our tool, it makes it so easy. You just go in there, you see the transcript, you can listen to the phone calls, you can see what people are asking for. You just need to review 10 of them and you see patterns. And then from those patterns, you're like, oh, are we targeting those words that they're saying? And you start targeting those. So step 1, track the data. Step 2, look at the data and not just look at the summary, look at the individual leads and what people are saying. There's so much insight in just reviewing those leads. So even though we've got the 6-step roadmap, in that 6-step roadmap, we have 0 automation. So we're a product that can be automated. We have a whole lead intelligence. And we're telling people, don't automate until you've reviewed and until you've qualified manually, let's say 100 leads, because that's going to show you what data you can work with to automate. Because if you jump to automating and you haven't looked at the data, you're not going to see oh, the landing page has a lot of good information for me. So if somebody came from a hard floor and a hard flooring campaign, and the keyword they used was hardwood refinishing, and then the landing page that they landed on was the hardwood flooring page, and then in the transcript they were talking about, hey, look, I'm looking at refinishing the bottom floor of my house. Do you see how you see the patterns? And you say oh, it wasn't just a transcript that had the data. It was all the journey, the landing pages, which pages they visited, because we track every page they visit, and you see patterns. Now, once you see those patterns and they happen again and again and again, only then are you ready to automate. So that's the process we mentioned. It's track data. Step 2, look at your data. Step 3 is qualify and value your leads. So we call it QCV, qualify, categorize, value. And then it's step 4, review the reporting. Now, this is when you get into the summary, getting the higher level insights. Step 5 is in step 4, it's use those insights to make campaign decisions, use those insights to show your client. Step 5 is optimize. So with the optimization, just by qualifying the leads, you can send that value directly back to Google, which automatically optimizes the campaigns. And then step 6 is to take a longer term view, look at 3 months worth of data and now strategically plan going forward. So that's our 6-step process, but it all starts with getting the data. So you've got to get the data, and there has to be quality data, has to have all the information in there to make decisions. And then from there, it's just follow the process. Once you got it in there and you got the patterns, then you go to the next stage of automated, where you've got consistent patterns. And then, that's if you keep doing that and you just get a little bit better every day, what you find is you look behind you, it's like, whoa, we grew 100% the last 3 months.
Right. You know, it's interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody early this morning, and I said, look, one of the things that you have to understand is that everything works and nothing works at the same time. And what I mean by that is that this particular gentleman drew the conclusion that something didn't work. And he's like, we tried it and we didn't work. But that's the wrong thing to look at. So you have basically a red metric. So when something goes off, a campaign says, okay, this doesn't work, we now have to look under the hood. And there's so many different variables that you have to look at, because it's never, from my experience, the whole thing that doesn't work. There is something that's not working, and it might actually be one tiny piece of the entire puzzle that's not working. So you have to be careful not to throw everything out. So if we look at
Mhm.
ads, for example, it could be the ad itself, it could be the keyword, it could be the platform, it could be, is the landing page converting or not converting? It could
Mhm.
be, what is the follow-up sequence that's going on from the moment that you filled out that ad? It could be the emails itself, or the emails getting opened. Are you getting the type of engagement that you want on the emails? When it goes to the sales team, is the sales team actually converting or not converting? So break it all out into as micro detail as you can to figure out what actually is working and what is not working. Lo and
Mhm.
behold, in this particular case, what actually wasn't working was the sales team wasn't doing what they should be doing. So he was willing to throw away everything that was leading up to it, believing that it didn't work, instead of realizing actually everything seemed to be working well, but it was the sales team at the end that wasn't handling the leads in the way that they should have handled the leads. This is where data actually pays off, because
Yeah.
almost always one or two small things that,
Mhm.
in the bigger picture, that when addressed, it can work really great. So you got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak.
No, and that's why I said we're a truth-seeking tool, and many good marketing campaigns have been destroyed by people just not picking up the phone.
Yeah,
And it's amazing, like, we love technology and everyone's talking about AI and all this amazing stuff, but a lot of people, they use our tool just to hear how sales are answering the call.
yeah,
It's like that one thing, and I'm like, "But we have all this, we have this attribution, we got these customer journey," and they're just like, "Yeah, no, I mean, the most useful thing for me is just seeing how our sales team answer the calls." And when you look at it, there's a lot of marketing campaigns that die because the sales people just don't answer the call, or they don't respond to the lead,
yeah.
and it's just like, it's crazy. So it's just, that's why I like, we want to be a truth-seeking tool, because sometimes sales do an amazing job, but there are many, many times where sales kind of drop the ball.
Sure. We've seen it before. How many times did salesperson follow up? Once, and that was it, because they're so busy chasing the warm leads. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, we've got another example with these HVAC clients. They've got a long sales cycle. So you mentioned, sometimes things take 2 years. And in the HVAC world, what normally happens is you do marketing and the guy's HVAC unit isn't working. So they call for an inspection. The inspector goes, I says, "Oh yeah, you got a problem. Your condenser is fried. Let me replace that. It's an $800 job." And the guy says, "You know what? Your unit's like, 20 years old. You should probably look to replace it." And they quote them at that stage. So marketing gets credited for that $800 call out. So marketing did a good job. That lead that they quoted goes into the system, and when the next year comes around again, the HVAC unit fails again, and now it's in the CRM. And even if it came through marketing again, the CRM will attribute that larger sale, which is the $20,000 sale, to the operations or sales team. And so, like, we see it many times where it's just like marketing got them the inspection, marketing brought them back again when they're ready to buy, but operations got the credit for 20,000, marketing got $800 in credit. And so when I tell people, it's like, not every case is like that, operations and sales do their part and they get it, but all we want is the truth. I really do believe that marketing gets undervalued and blamed. They should be valued a lot higher and blamed a lot less.
Well, and you see that too in the B2B space where sales is supposed to do all the heavy lifting, but without actually
Mhm.
realizing that so much actually has to happen from marketing because so much of the buying behavior actually goes on with marketing before they get on the phone with the salesperson.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're pushing up against the clock. I'm going to be respectful of your time. This is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. What would you say is your biggest, best tip for our listeners that want to take their businesses beyond seven figures?
Geez, like that's a short question for a long answer. So I think the one thing I've really come to realize over my career is understand value. And I think a lot of marketers don't understand their value. And so, for example, when I first moved to the USA, we got a client and we got what I thought was a great contract. This is 20 years ago. And they paid us 60 grand. And I was like, it's 5 grand a month, covered our expenses, we were good. But I learned that from the leads we generated in that year, the sales guy got paid $600,000 and the company made $6 million in sales. And so I just looked at that and I learned the lesson. And it's like, shame on me for not knowing my value.
Mm,
And I think a lot of marketers go through their whole career putting together packages based on the price, the hourly rate, and not really basing their pricing on the value they can generate.
mm,
And so there are agencies who know this value, who are specialized in an industry, they know the value they can bring. And when you ask me the question, what are the best agencies doing? They understand the value of the marketing they bring.
yeah.
So there's one agency, they will only take on clients that are wanting to grow. They already have established, like they have 5 service trucks and they want to grow to 10 service trucks. They'll only take on a client who do that because they know that they're probably at 3 to 5 million and they want to grow to 10 million.
Hmm.
So their value that they can bring is 5 to 10 million.
Yeah.
And so what they charge is based on the value that they can bring and not on the hourly rate. So if you ask me, what is the one thing, is learn your value. And sometimes how you learn your value is being a specialist in an industry where you know the value you can drive.
Got it. Awesome. Well, we covered a lot in today's podcast. We spoke about what converts quite a bit and the tools, but more specifically, we talked about the importance of, well, determining the value of the efforts that you're doing and how it's the buyer's journey isn't as simple as just saying, hey, click the ad and buy and then attribute it to the ad. Buyer's journey is all over the place. And how do you know what works and what doesn't work? The more data you have, the more effective you can be at the work that you do, as well as more efficient, so that your ROAS ends up growing higher and higher and higher, affording you the opportunity to then increase your budget, should it make sense, and ultimately increase your revenue. Just like what Michael talked about, the difference between the client that was doing $1 million versus $20 million. One was really obsessing over the data to make smart decisions, while the other one looked at marketing almost as an expense. So guesswork is cancer of all business. Remove the cancer, remove the guesswork, and that helps you become far more effective at the work that you're doing. Now, Michael, people want to learn more about you and the work that you do. Where do we send them?
Find me on LinkedIn. I'm finally deciding, let me do more on LinkedIn. So yeah, find me there.
Excellent. So that's Michael Cooney on LinkedIn, and then that's WhatConverts.com as well. So you can check them out there. And for all our listeners, once again, looking for more tips to grow your business faster, more predictably, less dependent on you. Also, check us out, predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Cadet with my new friend, Michael Cooney, and I will see you in another episode.
Thank you so much, Charles.